the ultimate test of love. Before we dive into this incredible journey of love, betrayal, and ultimate loyalty, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. This is a story you won't want to miss a single second of. It's going to be a wild, emotional ride. Dante was the most powerful man in the city, a man who commanded silence just by walking into a room. He had everything money could buy, but his heart belonged entirely to Maya. Maya was a beautiful, kind-hearted black woman who worked as a nurse before she met him. She loved Dante, not for his billions or his guards, but for the quiet moments they shared when the world was shut out. However, Dante lived in a world of shadows and lies, and he struggled to believe that anyone could love him for who he truly was. Dante's advisors whispered in his ear constantly, telling him that Maya was only there for the diamond necklaces and the private jets. They warned him that she would leave the moment a better offer came along. Dante hated those whispers, but they planted a seed of doubt in his mind that began to grow. He decided he needed to know the truth, even if it meant breaking his own heart. He came up with a plan to test her, a plan that would involve a man even richer and more charming than himself. He contacted an old associate named Julian, a billionaire playboy known for getting whatever he wanted. Dante offered Julian a deal: try to win Maya's heart and get her to leave Dante. If Maya stayed, Dante would finally have peace. If she left, he would know the truth. Julian accepted the challenge, seeing it as a game of high stakes. Dante felt a sick feeling in his stomach as he set the wheels in motion. He didn't realize that playing with people's hearts always comes with a heavy price. The first meeting happened at a high-end charity gala that Dante insisted Maya attend. Dante got called away for a business emergency, leaving Maya alone in a room full of strangers. That was when Julian made his move, approaching her with a smile that had melted 1,000 hearts. He was polite, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in her work as a nurse. Maya was polite back, but her eyes kept searching the room for Dante. She felt out of place in this world of cold gold and fake smiles. Julian didn't give up easily and began showing up everywhere Maya went. He sent massive bouquets of rare flowers to the penthouse and accidentally bumped into her at her favorite coffee shop. He spoke about a life of freedom, traveling the world without guards or the fear of violence. He painted a picture of a peaceful life that Dante could never provide. Maya was confused by the sudden attention from this stranger, but she remained focused on the man she loved. She told Julian she was happy where she was, but Julian only smiled and told her she deserved more. Dante watched everything through hidden cameras and reports from his men. He saw Julian giving Maya expensive gifts that she politely declined or gave to charity. He saw Julian whispering in her ear, and he saw the moments where Maya looked lonely. Instead of feeling relieved, Dante felt a burning jealousy that he couldn't control. He was hurting the woman he loved just to satisfy his own insecurity. He wanted to stop the test, but he was too deep into the lie to turn back now. One night, Dante stayed late at his office and watched the monitors as Julian took Maya to dinner. He saw Julian reach across the table and take Maya's hand, telling her he could give her a life of safety. Maya didn't pull her hand away immediately. She looked tired and sad. Dante felt his world crumbling, thinking he had already lost her. He didn't hear what she said next, but the look on her face was one of deep conflict. The test was working, but it was destroying the very thing Dante wanted to protect. As the days went by, the pressure on Maya began to show. Dante became colder and more distant, pretending to be obsessed with his business, while secretly watching her every move. He wanted Maya to feel the void so that Julian's offer would seem more tempting. Maya tried to talk to Dante, to ask him why he was pulling away, but he would only give her short, icy answers. She felt like she was living with a ghost in a mansion that felt more like a prison every day. Julian escalated his pursuit, offering Maya a choice that seemed impossible to refuse. He told her he had a private jet fueled and ready to take her to a private island where Dante could never find her. He promised her a life where she didn't have to worry about car bombs or rival gangs. Maya listened to him, her eyes filling with tears because she felt so alone in her relationship. She started to wonder if Dante even loved her anymore, or if she was just a trophy on his shelf. Dante's top general, a man who had been with him for 20 years, told him he was being a fool. He told Dante that Maya was the only pure thing in his life and that he was throwing it away for a ghost of a doubt. Dante erupted in anger, nearly striking his oldest friend, because the guilt was eating him alive. He was trapped in his own web of lies, and he didn't know how to stop. He told Julian to make one final, massive offer to Maya to end the game once and for all. Julian invited Maya to a rooftop garden overlooking the city and laid it all out. He offered her a bank account with $50 million in her name and a new identity. He told her that Dante was a dangerous man who would eventually get her killed or tired of her. He told her that this was her last chance to escape the darkness of the Mafia world. Maya looked out over the city lights, her heart heavy with the weight of her love for a man who seemed to be disappearing. Back at the mansion, Dante sat in the dark, staring at a blank screen. He had turned off the cameras because he couldn't bear to watch the final betrayal. He convinced himself that she would leave, and he was already planning how he would disappear into his work forever. He felt a profound sense of loss, realizing that he had pushed away the only person who ever saw the man behind the monster. He waited for the phone call from Julian telling him that Maya was gone. Suddenly, the front door of the penthouse opened. Dante didn't move, thinking it was just his guards. But then he heard the familiar sound of Maya's footsteps, slow and heavy. She walked into the library where he was sitting and didn't turn on the lights. She stood in the doorway, a shadow against the hallway light. Dante's heart hammered against his ribs as he waited for her to speak, his breath catching in his throat. Maya walked over to him and knelt on the floor between his knees. She took his cold hands in hers and pressed them to her cheeks. She told him that a man had offered her the world tonight, but she told that man the world was nothing without Dante. She said she would rather die by Dante's side than live 100 years with a man she didn't love. Dante began to sob, the sound raw and painful, as he realized he had almost destroyed the most precious thing he ever had. The relief Dante felt was short-lived, replaced by an overwhelming sense of shame. He had lied to her, manipulated her, and used a professional seducer to mess with her head. He wanted to tell her the truth, but he was terrified she would leave him the moment she found out what he had done. He held her tightly that night, promising himself he would make it up to her every day for the rest of his life. But secrets in the Mafia world never stay buried for long, and the truth was already starting to leak out. Julian wasn't happy about losing the game. He had actually started to develop feelings for Maya during the test, and he felt insulted that she chose a thug like Dante over him. Julian decided that if he couldn't have her, he would make sure she knew exactly what kind of man Dante was. He began sending Maya anonymous messages, hinting that her chance meetings with him weren't accidents at all. Maya started to feel a sense of unease, noticing things that didn't add up about the past few weeks. Maya began to do her own digging, which was something Dante never expected. She was a smart woman, and she started to notice that Julian always knew where she was going to be before she even got there. She found a receipt in Dante's office for a payment to a private security firm that Julian owned. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, and the picture they formed was terrifying. She didn't want to believe that the man she loved would be capable of such a cruel game. One afternoon, while Dante was at a meeting, Maya went to Julian's office. She didn't go there to be with him. She went there for answers. Julian didn't hold back. He showed her the contract Dante had signed and the recordings of their meetings. He played a clip of Dante saying he needed to know if she was worth the trouble. Maya felt like she had been punched in the stomach, the air leaving her lungs as she watched the man she trusted treat her like a lab rat. She left the office in a daze, walking through the city streets without a jacket even though it was cold. She felt foolish for believing in their love and for defending Dante to everyone who warned her about him. She realized that Dante didn't see her as a partner. He saw her as a possession that needed to be verified. The pain was different than anything she had ever felt. It was a deep, cold betrayal that shattered her soul. She didn't go back to the penthouse that night. Dante came home to an empty house and a wedding ring sitting on the kitchen table. Next to the ring was a note that simply said, "I was worth the love, but you weren't worth the truth." Dante felt a wave of panic and rage. He called his men, ordering them to find her immediately, but he knew Maya better than anyone. She didn't want to be found, and she knew how to disappear. He had won the test, but he had lost the woman. He spent the night tearing his office apart, screaming at the walls. He realized that in his quest to see if she would betray him, he was the one who had committed the ultimate betrayal. He had proven she was loyal, but he had proven he was unworthy of that loyalty. As the sun rose, Dante received a phone call from a rival family. They had seen Maya alone on the street and had picked her up. The test had now turned into a deadly reality. The rival boss, a cruel man named Lorenzo, called Dante with a chilling laugh. He told Dante that he had Maya and that he knew all about the test Dante had put her through. Lorenzo mocked Dante, saying that a man who doesn't trust his own woman is a man who is easy to break. He demanded half of Dante's territory in exchange for Maya's life. Dante felt a cold, sharp focus take over his mind. The time for crying was over, and the time for war had begun. Maya was kept in a basement, tied to a wooden chair. She wasn't afraid of the men with guns. She was too filled with sadness to feel fear. When Lorenzo told her that Dante was coming for her, she didn't feel relieved. She felt tired. She told Lorenzo that Dante had already destroyed her, so there wasn't much left for him to kill. Lorenzo was taken aback by her calmness, realizing that the emotional damage Dante caused was deeper than any physical pain he could inflict. Dante gathered his entire army, but he knew a frontal assault would get Maya killed. He had to be smart, and he had to be fast. He reached out to Julian, the man who had helped him start this mess. He told Julian that if he didn't help save Maya, he would end him. Julian, feeling a rare moment of guilt for his role in the drama, agreed to use his tech connections to pinpoint Maya's exact location and disable Lorenzo's security systems. The rescue mission was a blur of gunfire and shadows. Dante moved through the rival warehouse like a man possessed, taking out anyone who stood in his way. He didn't care about his own life. He only cared about reaching the basement. When he finally kicked the door open, he saw Maya sitting there, pale and exhausted. He ran to her, cutting her ropes with a trembling hand, but when he tried to pull her into his arms, she pushed him away. She stood up on her own, her legs shaking, and walked toward the exit without saying a word to him. Dante followed her, protecting her from the remaining gunmen as they fought their way to the cars. He drove her to a safe house, a small cottage by the lake that no one knew about. The entire ride was silent, the air heavy with things that couldn't be unsaid. Dante wanted to apologize, to scream, to beg, but he knew words were useless now. At the cottage, Maya finally turned to him. She didn't yell or scream. She spoke in a whisper that cut deeper than a knife. She told him that she would have stayed with him through a war, through poverty, and through death. But she couldn't stay with a man who looked at her and saw a potential traitor. She told him that the test was the moment their relationship died and the kidnapping was just the funeral. She asked him to leave and never come back. Dante stood on the porch of the cottage, watching the woman he loved through the window. He realized that some things can't be fixed with money or power. He had treated her love like a commodity, and now he had nothing. He left her there with a team of guards he knew she would eventually fire, and he drove back to his empty empire. He had all the power in the world, but he was the poorest man alive. 3 months passed, and Dante was a shell of a man. He had stopped the tests, stopped the games, and focused only on keeping Maya safe from a distance. He never approached her, but he made sure her hospital bills were paid and her family was taken care of. He lived in constant regret, the silence of his mansion a daily reminder of his failure. One day, he received a package in the mail with no return address. Inside was a small white baby shoe and the medical report. Maya was pregnant. She had been pregnant during the test, during the kidnapping, and during their breakup. She hadn't told him because she didn't want him to stay out of obligation, and she didn't want her child raised in a world of lies. Dante felt a surge of hope he didn't deserve. He knew he couldn't just rush back into her life, but he knew he had to prove he was a changed man, not for her, but for the child they had created. He did something no mafia boss had ever done. He began to dismantle his criminal empire. He turned over evidence to the authorities that would put his rivals away for life, and he moved his legitimate billions into a trust for the city's poor. He stepped down from his position, giving up his power and his throne. He wanted to be a man Maya could trust, a man who didn't need to test anyone because he finally trusted himself. It took another 6 months of hard work and sacrifice. One evening, Maya was sitting on the porch of her new, humble home in a quiet suburb. She saw a man walking down the street, carrying a small bouquet of grocery store daisies, her favorite. It wasn't Dante the Mafia Boss. There were no suits, no guards, and no armored SUVs. It was just Dante, the man. He stopped at the edge of her yard and didn't come closer, waiting for her permission. He looked older, tired, but his eyes were clear and honest. He told her everything he had done. He told her he was no longer the man who lived in the shadows. He didn't ask her to take him back. He only asked for the chance to be a father and to earn her friendship. Maya looked at him for a long time, seeing the truth in his eyes for the first time in years. She felt the baby kick inside her, a reminder of the future that was still possible. She stood up and walked down the steps toward him. The unbelievable part wasn't just that she forgave him, it was what happened next. As they stood there, a black car pulled up. Out stepped Julian, the man who had started the test. But he wasn't there to cause trouble. He handed Dante a file and told him that during the test, he had discovered that Dante's own father had set the whole thing up. His father had wanted Dante to stay single and cold to lead the family better. Dante realized his entire life had been a test he was never meant to win. Dante and Maya looked at each other, realizing they had both been victims of a much larger game. They decided right then to leave the past behind completely. They moved to a place where no one knew their names, raising their daughter in a house filled with light and truth. Dante never tested her again because he realized that love isn't about proving someone's loyalty. It's about being someone worth being loyal to. They finally found the peace that money could never buy.